Okay, so relationships. It's something everyone thinks about, right? That search for meaningful connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it can feel, well, really confusing sometimes, trying to figure out what's actually healthy, what works long term.
Yeah, totally. It's easy to get lost. So we've been digging through a stack of different sources, articles, insights from experts, even some more philosophical takes.
All trying to get a handle on this complex topic.
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive is, well, to cut through some of that noise. We want to pull out the really valuable insights, the stuff that might give you those aha moments about your own connections.
Looking beyond just the surface level, understanding the deeper dynamics at play.
Right. So not just definitions, but how this stuff actually shows up in real life. We're looking at the foundations, the potential pitfalls, and maybe what we're all truly searching for.
Yeah, we've got perspectives covering all those angles.
Okay, so let's start right there with the foundation. What actually makes a relationship healthy? Because, like you said, it's definitely not about being happy 24/7.
That's probably the biggest misconception. The sources are really clear. Healthy relationships absolutely involve navigating difficulties. It's how you navigate them that matters.
Okay, so what are the key ingredients then?
Well, the core things that kept coming up were real honesty, that foundational trust, mutual respect, definitely open communication where you feel safe.
Safe communication, I like that.
Yeah, and also being able to make decisions together, mutually. And even if it comes to it, handling endings responsibly.
Okay, those sound good in theory, but how does that actually look day to day? What does a healthy connection feel like in practice?
It often comes down to a feeling of ease, actually. Good communication isn't just talking a lot, it's feeling genuinely comfortable.
Comfortable saying anything.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Expressing opinions, concerns, even vulnerabilities without constantly worrying about a backlash. One source called it having psychological safety.
Psychological safety. Yeah, that feels deeper than just talking.
It is. And it connects to responsibility, too. Not just being accountable to your partner, but feeling this shared accountability for the relationship itself.
Like you're both invested in its well-being.
Exactly. Valuing their feelings, their desires as much as your own. And compromise is huge. When disagreements happen, and they will share it, it's about finding common ground.
Not just one person giving in all the time.
Right. It's respectful, understanding each other's viewpoint, and working together to find a solution that feels okay for both people. You should feel like you're on the same team tackling the problem, not each other.
Okay, that paints a really positive picture, but here's where it gets tricky, right?
Yeah.
If that's health, safety, mutual effort, navigating storms together, what about the flip side? When things start feeling, well, not safe. Let's get into the toxic signs.
Yeah, this is crucial. Toxic relationships aren't just difficult sometimes. They're defined by these repeated harmful patterns of behavior. They create this atmosphere of fear and insecurity.
Fear and insecurity, like you can't relax.
Exactly. One source used the phrase walking on eggshells, that constant feeling of tension, never knowing what might set the other person off.
Walking on eggshells. Wow, yeah, that's vivid. So what are some specific warning signs the sources flagged?
Okay, a really big one is a fundamental lack of support or encouragement. Instead of cheering you on, your partner might, subtly or not so subtly, undermine your successes.
How does that usually show up?
It could be passive-aggressive comments, sarcasm, or maybe turning your achievement into something about them. Like you share good news, and instead of excitement, you get, well, something that makes you feel small.
Yeah, that immediate deflation takes the wind right out of your sails.
Precisely. Then there's poor communication, but not just a lack of it. It's communication that's filled with negativity.
Like constant digs.
Yeah, constant criticism, sarcasm that bites, mockery, contempt even. It's not about feedback, it's more like an attack on who you are.
And that probably kills trust too, right?
Absolutely. Which leads to another sign, a profound lack of trust. This often manifests as extreme jealousy or controlling behaviors.
Like needing to know where you are all the time, checking your phone.
Exactly. Feeling constantly interrogated, having to justify normal interactions.
Yeah.
That constant doubt, it's incredibly draining. And then there's neglecting needs or even exploitation. This is when your partner consistently ignores your emotional needs, maybe your physical needs too, or they actively use you.
Use you. Like for money or status.
Could be. Or just for convenience, maybe emotional support without giving any back. You end up feeling unimportant or like you're just a means to an end. It's very one-sided.
So it's not mutual care anymore.
Not at all. And related to this is feeling alienated. This one can be sneaky. You gradually pull back from your friends, your family, your hobbies.
Until your whole world is just them.
Yeah. You lose your sense of self. Your own identity kind of fades. The sources mention this often gets disguised as intense closeness, like it's just us against the world. But really, you're becoming isolated. And finally, there's just this overall cycle of negativity. Constant anger, constant criticism, just a pervasive feeling of tension and unhappiness. It feels like you're stuck.
It sounds exhausting just describing it.
It is. And it's so important to recognize these patterns because toxic relationships don't just make you unhappy, they actively damage your self-esteem, your mental health. They really take a toll.
Okay, that's heavy, but really vital to understand. So, knowing the difference, how do we actively build the healthy kind? What skills do we need? Communication seems to be ground zero.
Communication is definitely the bedrock. But the sources emphasize it's not just talking, it's also listening, active listening, which sounds simple, but is actually quite hard.
What does it really mean beyond just not talking over someone?
It means giving your full focus, like put the phone away, make eye contact, listen to understand, not just to figure out what you're going to say next.
Ah, yeah. Planning your rebuttal while they're still talking. We all do that sometimes.
We do. So tips include really minimizing distractions, showing empathy, nodding, making affirming sounds, and maybe summarizing what you heard.
Summarizing, like repeating it back.
Yeah, like, okay, so if I'm hearing you right, you're feeling frustrated because it shows you were listening and gives them a chance to clarify. It makes the speaker feel genuinely heard. It could be incredibly powerful. Then there's clear self-expression, being honest and direct about your feelings and needs, but importantly, doing it responsibly.
Responsibly? How so?
Using I feel statements is highly recommended. Instead of say, you always make me feel bad when you do that, try, I feel hurt when X happens. See the difference?
Yeah, it's less accusatory. Focuses on your experience.
Exactly. Reduces defensiveness.
Yeah.
And things like maintaining open, positive body language, even when the topic is tough, helps too. Avoid sending mixed signals.
That small shift from you to I seems like it could change everything.
It often does. And then dealing with conflict. Because conflict is normal. Healthy couples have conflict. The key is how they handle it.
So, not avoiding it.
Definitely not avoiding it, but focusing on dialogue, trying to understand the other person's perspective, even if you don't agree. No personal attacks, no name calling. The goal is to find a solution together, one that respects everyone involved. Think of it as tackling a problem side by side.
Okay, communication and conflict resolution. What else is crucial? Trust comes up a lot.
Trust is everything. It's built slowly through consistent actions and, again, open communication. Simple things, really, but hard in practice.
Like what?
Like keeping your promises, being transparent unless it genuinely violates necessary privacy, which, loops back to boundaries. Admitting when you mess up instead of making excuses or hiding it.
So reliability and honesty build trust over time.
Exactly. It's not a one-off thing. It's earned continuously. It's the pillar that lets the relationship withstand challenges. Without it, things get shaky fast.
And underlying all of this, it seems, are boundaries. They seem to pop up everywhere in these discussions.
Oh, absolutely critical. Boundaries are basically the rules of engagement. They're about how you need to be treated to feel respected, safe, and, frankly, sane. They protect your well-being.
Like defining your personal space.
That's one type, yeah. Personal boundaries, privacy, space. They're also responsibility boundaries, knowing what's yours to handle and what's theirs, not taking on their stuff, not expecting them to fix yours. And needs boundaries, making sure your own needs get met, not sacrificing yourself constantly for the other person.
How do you even start setting them? It can feel awkward.
It starts with knowing yourself. What are your limits? What do you absolutely need? And then learning to communicate that, often by learning to say no, clearly but kindly. And the sources really stress this. Set them early.
Easier said than done, maybe.
For sure. But it's much harder to establish them later once unhealthy patterns are set. And remember, boundaries aren't about controlling the other person. They're about protecting the relationship's health and your own integrity.
Okay, but what if you set a boundary and it just keeps getting ignored or pushed?
Yeah, that's tough. The sources lay out a few paths, just letting it slide. That basically signals your boundary isn't real, not recommended.
Right, teaches them they can ignore it.
Exactly. A better option is to renegotiate or restate it. Clearly explain why it's important and what the consequence will be if it's crossed again. But if the behavior still continues, especially if it's harmful,
then what?
Then you might need to seriously consider limiting contact, or in some cases, ending the relationship. Protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. One source put it bluntly, people will treat you how you've shown them they can.
Wow, that's a powerful, if difficult, Truth. Puts the agency back on you, in a way.
It really does. It's about recognizing what you can and can't control.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit now into something maybe a little more philosophical. One of the really fascinating things in the sources was this distinction between true love and, well, just need.
Ah, yes. This was a really thought-provoking section. It challenges us to look beyond just functioning together. It contrasts just living alongside someone sharing bills, daily routines, with truly coexisting.
Coexisting meaning.
Building a shared life based on common values, a deeper connection, a sense of purpose together, not just occupying the same space.
So where does that initial spark, that romantic attraction, fit in?
It's acknowledged as often being the starting point, of course.
Yeah.
Physical attraction, charm, feeling understood, maybe even that intense desire for closeness, for feeling contained or safe. But the source is warned. This is where we can get fooled.
Fooled how?
We can easily mistake the feeling of having a need, met the need for attention, validation, security, excitement, whatever it is, for actual love for the person.
So the intensity might be about filling a hole inside me rather than truly connecting with them.
Exactly. Need, in this framework, is described almost like a child's desire for a toy. It's about possession, control, fulfilling an immediate want, often without deeply valuing the object itself or the effort behind it. This kind of need can push us towards external things, status maybe, or just avoiding loneliness, overriding deeper values. True love, by contrast, is painted as something much more noble, elevating, something that builds, contributes positively without selfishness. And here's the kicker. It's described as being rooted in mercy and forgiveness first.
Mercy and forgiveness before attraction. That really flips the script on the usual romance narrative.
It absolutely does. It suggests real love isn't just, I'm drawn to you because you tick my boxes.
Yeah.
It's more about a fundamental capacity for compassion, for seeing flaws and choosing understanding and forgiveness anyway. That capacity is what allows a resilient, deeper bond to grow.
So it's less about finding the perfect person and more about having the capacity for grace.
Something like that. It's presented as requiring both head and heart. Intellect, working with emotion. Need isn't necessarily bad, but in this context, it becomes a reason for positive growth and pursuit, not just achieving an end goal regardless of the cost.
Okay, that distinction feels really important. Why is getting that difference right so critical when we're navigating relationships?
Because mistaking need for love often leads to choosing the wrong partners and sets you up for disappointment, even heartache. If your primary drive is to fill a void or find someone to complete you, you're much more likely to ignore red flags or fundamental incompatibilities.
You're focused on the feeling, not the foundation.
Precisely. You're seeking a function, not necessarily fostering a genuine connection with that specific person. The sources suggest that true, lasting fulfillment comes from something deeper than just satisfying these immediate needs, linking it to a bigger sense of purpose.
That really adds depth. Okay, so if we understand that, how do we apply it? Let's talk about actually choosing a partner. That huge decision, what should we be looking for?
Well, the sources suggest a blend of factors. Shared values are consistently highlighted as crucial. Things like honesty, kindness, respect. Having alignment on those core principles is more predictive of long-term harmony than, say, liking the same movies.
Makes sense. What else?
A strong foundation of friendship. Can you actually talk to this person? Do you enjoy their company just as a person, not only as a romantic partner? That friendship provides stability. Shared goals for the future are also important. Having a similar vision for big things like career, family, lifestyle helps avoid major clashes later.
So it's not all just about the initial in-love feeling.
Definitely not. You need intellect working alongside emotion. Love is vital, but it's not enough on its own. You need that clear-eyed look at compatibility. Can you rely on them? Are they dependable? Understanding their background, their environment, family dynamics, lifestyle is useful too, because that shapes expectations.
And what about looks, physical attraction?
The sources acknowledge it plays a role, especially initially. Of course it does. But they emphasize it's just one layer and not the foundational one. Values, character, friendship, that's the bedrock.
It sounds like a lot to consider. Why do you think so many people find this choice so difficult, so paralyzing sometimes?
Oh, there are many reasons. Fear of failure, maybe based on past hurts, seeking some kind of unattainable perfection, feeling intense social or family pressure, maybe just not being emotionally ready for that level of commitment, or having unresolved trauma from previous relationships. It can feel overwhelming, like the stakes are impossibly high.
That feeling of being overwhelmed. Yeah, I can see that. So let's say you've made a choice. You're starting out. What's crucial in those early stages?
Honesty and transparency right from the get-go. Building that trust immediately. Don't try to be someone you're not just to impress them.
Be real from day one.
Exactly. And respecting privacy and independence is huge early on, too. Don't smother them. Give each other space. Avoid demanding constant contact or getting upset if they have their own life.
And boundaries again.
Yes. Set clear boundaries early. It signals self-respect and sets a healthy precedent for how you expect to be treated. It actually increases the chance of success. And critically, maintain your independence. Don't just merge into one identity. Keep your hobbies, your friends, your own interests. It keeps things fresh, prevents codependency, and allows both of you to keep growing.
Like being two whole people choosing to walk together.
That's a great way to put it. Not two halves trying to make a whole. Success comes from mutual understanding and respecting that individuality.
That's really valuable advice. Okay, finally, the really hard part. When should you actually consider walking away? What are the signs that maybe a relationship just isn't working or isn't healthy enough to continue?
It often comes back to recognizing those persistent toxic patterns or repeated serious boundary violations we talked about earlier. The sources suggest it might be time to reconsider if the relationship feels chronically unclear or if affection feels very conditional. I only love you if.
Performance-based love.
Right. Or if there's ongoing harm, emotional, verbal, maybe even physical, that isn't being addressed or changed. If it's just emotionally draining you constantly, impacting your health. Or if you find yourself always having to justify your partner's bad behavior or even your own feelings to yourself or others.
Those sound like clear signs that something is fundamentally wrong.
They indicate a dynamic that's likely causing more harm than good and might not be salvageable, at least not without massive mutual effort and potentially professional help.
And what about people who struggle even to form relationships because of fear? Fear of commitment, maybe.
Yeah, the sources definitely acknowledge that fear of commitment or intimacy is a real barrier for some. It often comes from a deep fear of rejection or being judged or feeling vulnerable, usually rooted in past experiences.
How does that show up?
It might look like avoiding serious relationships altogether, or finding fault with every potential partner, or making excuses to keep emotional distance. It's important to recognize this pattern, and the sources do mention that professional help can be really effective for working through these kinds of fears.
Okay, wow. We have really covered a lot of ground today. From what makes things healthy to the warning signs, the skills, the deeper questions.
It really highlights how much relationships involve conscious effort, self-awareness, and ongoing work. They don't just magically happen or sustain themselves.
Absolutely. So, if we were to boil it down, the big takeaways seem to be healthy relationships need that solid ground of respect, trust, open communication, and clear boundaries. They feel safe, allow for growth, even when things get tough.
And toxic relationships have recognizable damaging patterns that wear you down. Spotting them is key.
Right. And understanding that difference between genuine love and just trying to fill a need that's crucial for making better choices. Choosing a partner involves way more than just initial chemistry. Values and friendship matter immensely.
And starting out right means honesty, respecting independence from the beginning.
And finally, it's okay to face challenges, even fear around relationships. And it's okay to seek help or decide something isn't right for you anymore.
At the end of the day, building these healthy connections, making choices that align with your well-being, it requires you to be an active participant. It starts with self-awareness and effort.
And maybe one final thought to leave people with, something that really struck me from the sources, this idea that true love is based on mercy and forgiveness before attraction. If you really sit with that, how does it change how you view disagreements, or how you see your partner's flaws, or even your own?
That's a profound question.
It makes you wonder, what does it really mean to build a connection that, as the sources put it, elevates you, rather than just filling a temporary need or calming a fear? Something definitely worth reflecting on in your own life.